Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Becca Choate, and I serve as Associate for Global Advocacy and Education with Global Ministries of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ and the United Church of Christ. Welcome to Wednesdays with the World, a United Church of Christ webinar series. This series highlights the ways in which the quest for justice is intersectional and global, providing opportunities for increased awareness of global concerns and highlighting opportunities for advocacy and action. Today's webinar is called Planning Your 2023 Volunteer Service Trip. I'd now like to introduce my colleague, the Reverend Elena Larson, our UCC Minister for Volunteer Engagement, who will introduce our speakers and moderate our discussion. Elena.
Thank you, Becca. Not only my colleague, but Becca is also my office mate. So greetings to you from 1300 East 9th Street here in Cleveland, Ohio. Our new office is in the AECOM building. And we're delighted to say hello to all of you, to greet you, and to invite you to come visit us here. This is actually the reason we have a slightly different time frame today. A little early for those of you on the West Coast. Rachel, I see you in Sebastopol up at this very early hour. We thank you for coming because this is a really special topic. And so I'm so delighted to virtually welcome you to the office. We're having a big open house this afternoon and producing a webinar when it's like a whole building open house is going on was it was going to be a little challenging, but we definitely invite you to come and visit us. And I'm going to unblur my background for a quick second so you can see Becca's in our office. We share an office, but I'm in what's called a huddle room where you can do remote meetings. And guess what just popped up on the big double screen? My own face. So I get to see myself in it's like two 2x3 screens right there. For the rest of the webinar. So it'll be a little goofy. I might laugh at myself, but that's one of the great things about the ministry of volunteer ministries is that I'm not bragging because I didn't do it, but it's one of the really joyful parts of the church. It's a place where we promote mission trip culture, where we place full-time, long-term volunteer individuals. Sometimes they're young adults, sometimes they're retirees. People do like a 3-month stint at Back Bay Mission. And we really encourage young adults to do pre-professional apprenticeships. In fact, in the next 2 or 3 email newsletters from our teams, you're going to be hearing about young adult summer service opportunities. We're going to be announcing an exciting partnership with Outdoor Ministries for summer 2023 to support young adults to have pre-professional service learning experiences in the amazing outdoor ministries of our denomination. So good stuff coming up, but today we're talking about mission trips, work trips, service trips. I try to say volunteer trip because I want to be people focused. And I know that all the folks on this screen today are people focused persons. And I want to thank Brandy and Becca, my colleagues, for our tech support as I introduce our speakers. First, I'm going to introduce you to Nate Taylor, who is the Director of Youth Ministries at the Avon Lake UCC Church here in the greater Cleveland area, congregation with a large tradition of youth ministries and mission trip work. Next to him is Amanda Verbeck, who is calling in from St. Louis from the Urban Mission Experience, which is a ministry site inside a UCC church that receives mission trip groups. So you have the person who's planning the mission trip from their local congregation. You have the person who's receiving mission trip or youth trip or volunteer trip personnel into their ministry where they host folks on the regular. And we have James Pennington, Executive Director of the Back Bay Mission, which kind of does like all of the above. They receive older adult long-term volunteers. They receive young adult apprentices in the summer. They receive volunteer work trip groups all year round, and they do actually kind of specialize, in my opinion, in creating that transformational experience that we're all looking for when we step outside of our comfort zone to meet God in a new place through the act of service. And he has a particular angle on intergenerational trips as well. So we are going to just start. Could I just add, Nate, why don't we start with you? Could you introduce us? Tell us a little bit about your ministry.
Thank you, Elena, and good morning, everyone. It's a privilege to be with you this morning. As Elena said, I have the privilege of serving at Avon Lake United Church of Christ. We're about 20 minutes outside of Cleveland. I'm just going to be frank with you. It's not a very diverse community, and we serve a upper middle class, affluent Cleveland suburb. And I've been serving here for about 15 years. My primary responsibilities include our junior high and our high school students and a little bit of young adult work. And service trips and mission trips have been at the foundation of what we do. And they've just grown into this thing that we never imagined what they are today. And it's something I absolutely love and I look forward to every year. And I'm excited to tell you a little bit about the work we do.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thanks for giving us a sense of your cultural location too. I think that's really important. And I appreciate your honesty and openness about that. It gives us all a little bit better of a picture of what it means when you're taking your youth outside of their space and the thoughtfulness that will help them have a spiritual experience when they do that. Amanda, would you take a minute and tell us about your location and your ministry?
Sure. Thanks again for having me. So I am the program coordinator for Urban Mission Experience St. Louis. And what that means is that we are a host church. We host the program out of Epiphany UCC, which is located in Benton Park, and that's in the city, so the downtown sort of city area of St. Louis. We are also in an interesting location for various reasons. One of them being we are very much a gentrifying neighborhood that is in transition. So we have some of the struggles and challenges that entails. The program itself for UME is set up to really explore the social justice issues that are impacting our city, specifically our neighborhood, but then finding those intersectional places where maybe that crosses over to the experience of the suburban youth or even the rural youth or person. We volunteer with nearby community organizations, so we partner with them. My job is to help you coordinate your trip. When you come here, you stay at Epiphany UCC. You have a kitchen at your disposal to use for your meals. Epiphany hosts one meal as well. Long story short, we take care of as much as we can for you, planning the trip to your needs and your specific areas, and really try to meet people where they are with these issues of social justice so that we're not either overwhelming or in some cases boring folks and try to make it as customized as possible. So we would love to have as many of you as possible for 2023. And as Nate said, I'll tell you more about the program soon.
Fantastic, Amanda. And thank you for mentioning the extensive hospitality that you offer in order to bring a group into a new context where they can learn and serve. That's so important and so powerful. And of course, St. Louis, big UCC hub. You know, if you have young people or older people who are thinking about a vocation in ministry, they could do a day at Eden Seminary or with the Deaconess Foundation. There's some really neat stuff there to layer in on the trip. Now, James is down, he's a little further south. How are you this morning, sir? Oops.
Doing well, thank you.
There we go. Now, Back Bay Mission is a beloved mission trip destination for many folks. And somebody could say, well, why have Back Bay Mission on here? Everybody's heard of it, but I don't know that everybody has.
They haven't.
Post-COVID, volunteerism has been really down for everybody. So I think it's important to remind people that mission trips at Back Bay Mission are still possible. And of course, congratulations on your centennial this year, 100 years of service.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, it's good to be with you all. Thank you for the invitation. And yeah, we are 100 years, and no, we are not a UCC hub down here on the coast of Mississippi, but at one point we did have a couple, 3 churches down here. So pretty fascinating place. I think what I really find, honestly, are the mission groups that come down, or we call them campers. So normally we'd have about 1,200 campers from mostly United Churches of Christ throughout the country, although we have a few Lutherans and Presbyterians that come down that have found out about us, and we have some local volunteers. But of course, during COVID, we're back up to about 350, 400. But during COVID, it was practically nil, so nothing. But we're on the coast of Mississippi, and I think it's a great context because I think many people ask us, so why come to Mississippi, and why leave our own context, our own church? And we say primarily because you really get engulfed and engaged, and you have an opportunity to really spend a week or 2 weeks, however long you want to be here, really understanding poverty, understanding people are unsheltered, understanding, and one thing that we're really going to start doing for our mission groups is really curtailing the experience for them. What is it you want to learn? Do you want to learn about the civil rights movement? We've got plenty of opportunities and day trips or half-day trips to visit sites, what I call sacred sites of the movement. Do you want to hear from individuals that have been a part of the movement that live here in Biloxi and Mississippi? But most importantly, of course, it's kind of hammers and nails and saws. And doing that experience, rehabbing homes along the coast here that have been damaged in Camille, Katrina, or homes that are almost becoming unlivable. So we see that as homeless prevention for folks, that we can rehab their homes, and a bit more than rehab. We try to do the very best rehab job we can. Right now, a group of volunteers from Wheaton, Illinois are here, and they're replacing a floor. The floor had fallen in the bathroom of a home, and they found out there was a lot of rot. And so they're completely replacing the floor. We have a state-of-the-art kitchen, I would say, and what we call our Taj Mahal for mission groups to come down. Personally, it would be challenging for me to sleep in a bunk bed with 25 people. I snore, but that's beside the point, right? So we have bunk rooms, we have a kitchen, we have kind of a general area for people to kind of hang out, to learn, to do education work. They can spend time at the Micah Day Center, which is a drop-in center for people who are experiencing homelessness. They can get a shower, they get meals. We have Loaves and Fishes on campus that feeds about 150 to 200 people a day, hot meals. We also have case managers that work preventing homelessness, but also helping homeless people get back up on their feet, find jobs, find employment, find housing, and so on. So I can explain more later, but that's kind of a snapshot.
Oh, that's great.
of
That's
what
really
we are.
helpful. Yeah. And that guest house really is right adjacent to the main office building. And so, I think a lot of times volunteer trips rise or fall on the logistics, unfortunately, because there's so many other more important things that we care about: spiritual formation, ministries of hospitality, growth and change. But one of the things about Back Bay Mission is if you have a group larger than that, there is a Methodist church camp, which can be your backup site. So let's say you have a 50-person group, you can stay at Seacoast Methodist Camp. Although we try to send our business to Back Bay if we can, our nonprofit business, nonprofit to nonprofit.
And we can house up to 50 folks here.
Oh, 50. Oh, thanks for the correction. That's an important detail. That's great.
Yep. So it's good.
Oh, good.
And one more thing we're inheriting, and one of the not-for-profits in the area is giving us Rebecca's House, which is a house where we can house 4 homeless families. So we just got word of that, and we're just moving forward. The board approved it, and it's very, very exciting. So
congratulations.
more about that.
That's amazing to be able to bring people right in.
Oh, yeah.
Well, so you've heard about 3 different organizations, all very different in their way, different parts of the country. So we're gonna talk now that we've kind of got a survey of different organizations. I'm gonna ask some questions, and I asked Nate to specifically take a minute about what are the basic concepts that makes a volunteer trip different than a vacation, different than the enrichment activities that your church members have in their local community. Of course, not every community has enrichment activities to the hilt, but he happens to be in one of those communities where you really have to know, because the kids do have a lot of choices. So how do you interpret to the families in your congregation the difference between a service trip and the other opportunities that might be in competition with your youth trip?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I've thought a lot about it. There's so much that goes into this, and I could talk about it all day. So I'm really going to try to summarize it. But again, everything I want to say to you, I just want to preface it. Like, I've had the privilege of doing this for 15 years, and every year we learn something new. We change something, we add something, we figure something out. Like this isn't what it looked like on year one. And it takes a lot of fails, and it takes a lot of getting up and dusting yourself off and figuring things out, and a lot of being able to self-reflect. And we're really big about evaluating, from the parents that sent their kids on the trip to the kids on the trip to the adult leaders, and really being able to take that constructive criticism and that feedback and do everything we can to improve the experience every year. Because as Elena said, we're in a community that we're competing not only for time, but for dollars, everything. But one of the biggest things is I think we've created a culture, and it took a lot of time. And there's 7 things that I listed, and I'll go through them pretty quickly if you don't mind, if you'll allow me to, that separate from just a vacation. One of the things we tell the kids all along is it's not a vacation. We say that from the outset, like, you are going to be going all day. Our days on our trips are the hardest thing for our adults to get their heads around. The hardest people to adjust to our trips are the adult leaders that go with us the first time, because we're going from 7 a.m. to 11 o'clock at night. It's for like 7 days in a row. And we tell them from the outside, like, don't sign up. Like, you need to really get your head around what that sounds like and what that feels like, because it's a lot. And yet we've found that immersive culture and that experience of just going creates a lot of other things that happen along the way, and the community and everything else. The first thing I wrote is I wrote down hard work as one of the elements, but I think I meant skilled work the more I thought about it, because we pride ourselves in having in being able to go into places and really do the hardest projects they have, the biggest projects they have. And we take the extra step of training our students before we leave. Each student is required to attend a skill session where we teach them the basic safety of power tools and how to use power tools and how to hang a piece of drywall and how to properly paint a wall. Like, there's techniques. I didn't even know this. I can't stand painting, but I've learned over the years that there's a proper way to paint a wall. We do all of this so that when we get wherever we're going, we can be as effective and as helpful as we can with the limited amount of time that we have to be there. And so that's number one. And we tell the kids and the adults, we're going to challenge you physically. We're going to challenge you mentally, emotionally, spiritually. This week, we are going to push you outside of your comfort zone in everything we do. And they have to be willing to embrace that from the outset. Number 2, and this is one of the most important, I think, is simply doing life together. We know that Jesus said that breaking bread together, having a meal together, it was so powerful. But there's something 100 times more powerful when you take a group of people and you do life together for a week. You're going to see them at their best. You're going to see them at their worst. And we have a phrase on our trips. It's embrace the awkwardness. It's going to get awkward. When you drive 16 hours to Maine, like we did this summer, inevitably, a kid's going to fart in a van, and it's going to be hilarious, and it's going to be epic, and it's going to be awkward, and you just have to embrace it. Those types of things happen when you when you do 24 hours of life together with a group of people for a week. But along the way, you develop this bond that you can't create in any other setting, and it's so powerful. Number 3, and I'm going to echo what James said, we leave our community. There is so much need in Cleveland and in greater Cleveland, and we try to address those needs as much as we can throughout the year in other ways. But there's a power of leaving your community and going into a different culture and immersing yourself and meeting a different group of people and learning about their way of lives and learning about the challenges that they face. And especially in Avon Lake, like I said earlier, it's a bubble here. It's a white, affluent bubble. And my challenge every year is to get those kids to say yes to stepping out of that bubble with us and letting us take them somewhere and expose them to what the rest of the world looks like, because it looks a lot different than it does in Avon Lake, Ohio. And so that's one piece of it. Number 4 is daily spiritual opportunities. Not only is prayer a huge part of what we do, we pray before every meal, we pray at the beginning of our work day, at the end of our work day, we pray at the end of the week with the homeowners that we've had the opportunity to serve with. But we also provide our students with a guidebook, and in that guidebook is a daily devotional. And every night we provide them a worship experience, and it all plays into a theme that we have for the week. And I think we're going to put the link to where you can take a look at our guidebook in the chat, and I encourage you to take a look at that. And if you ever have any questions, again, this is something that we've been working on for 15 years. So We're fortunate to have some talented people that help us put these things together. But that guidebook and that spiritual, that attention to our spiritual experience is also really important in everything we do. Number 5 is fun. You got to have fun. If you're going to take kids on a trip like this, everything we try to do, we try to have an element of fun. Whether it's we provide our leaders with a list of games they can do in the van rides to and from the trip. 16 hours is long and awkward and can be really boring, but we give them activities they can do. We have a quote board on our trips where somebody's going to say something really funny in the van or on the job site, and we say, let's remember that. So we have this big poster, and it's filled by Wednesday of just really funny quotes that a kid or maybe an adult says, or a bus driver that you're like, I can't believe you just said that. And so we save those so that we can reflect on those, and we kind of have them hanging up around our building. We do a thing called our dinner pre-show. Like when our students come back from the job site, we play these crazy games that all revolve around who gets to eat first and who gets to eat last. And it gives our food crew an opportunity to get ready. And we do games like that. We have all kinds of stuff throughout the week involving fun. And inevitably, at some point on the trip, we do some kind of experience, depending on where we are. So when we've gone to the Gulf Coast, we've taken our students on a airboat tour in the swamp, and it's incredible. When we go to Pennsylvania, we go whitewater rafting, or we've done zip lining. We do something where we can get out and experience something else that's fun and gives the kids an opportunity to bond through an activity like that. Number 6 is quality, well-trained volunteers. One of the most important things that you can do is have a good team of adults who understand what you're trying to accomplish, who are committed to the mission, who want to embrace the awkwardness, all the things I said. And we spend a lot of time not only training them, but vetting them and making sure that they're the right person to be one of our adult leaders, and not be just because you have a kid going on the trip doesn't necessarily mean you're the right fit to go and lead a group. And so I encourage you to really spend time investing in the adults that you have that will go on a trip like this with you. And then number 7 is mementos. I'm a big nostalgia person. I love antiquing. It's kind of a weird thing that I've fallen into, but we provide our students with a trip t-shirt every year, and we give them a name tag that they can keep. And like I mentioned, the guidebook earlier, and those things, I hear from our college students, like, I still have all my trip guidebooks. I still have my name. I'm like, why did you save your name tag from 8 years ago? But that's not for me to decide. They love hanging on to that stuff. And then the one thing that has become just this beautiful tradition, and I'll end with this, it's a thing we do every year on our trips called Happy Grams. And at the beginning of the week, we have each of the students and each of the adults create an envelope with their name on it. And throughout the week, we invite all of our team members, adults, students, to write notes of affirmation to each other, and they put them in these envelopes. And then they're not allowed to get these envelopes until we're on our way home or when we get back from our trip. And the idea is that by the end of the week, every student and every adult has this giant envelope just filled with affirmation and love, reminding them of this experience that they've been on and these friendships they've made. And I know students that are well into their 20s that'll call me and say, you know what, I pulled out my Happy Grams the other day. I was having a really awful day. And it's amazing what, these notes can do to lift your spirits. And it's almost become too much of a problem because we have to tell kids, like, you need to stop writing Happy Grams and go interact. Like, they'll be at the table all day. And so we've had to kind of modify it a little bit, but those are 7 things. I could probably name another 20, but in the time I have, those are 7 elements that I think are really important.
Nate, that's phenomenal. Thank you for summarizing. I think I'm going to ask you if I can publish that in our newsletter as like listicle. That's just an amazing set of perspectives. Thank you for that. So there you have the perspective of, he's the professional working with adult lay volunteers. You can hear how much energy he spends cultivating his lay adult volunteer group to work with his teens. And let's imagine, they get in the van and they head down to St. Louis and they meet Amanda, and they're going to participate for a week or more. So Amanda, as an urban ministry that receives volunteer groups, what do you hope will happen when a group comes to your site?
Well, that's a good question. So when groups arrive at our site, we hope we do get them out of their comfort zone, as Nate mentioned. I think that's a really important part of this experience. but as I said, we want to start by meeting them where they are. So I really would work with somebody like Nate to find out, like, what is the experience of the kids in your group? Where are you coming from? Do they know what the word gentrification means? I know I brought that up earlier, right? Or do we need to start with the basics? And that's okay. No matter where they are, that's just fine. But we want to be able to meet them where they are and bring them through an experience during the week that they're here. Really, when I work with a coordinator or a youth pastor like Nate, I'm looking at what do they want the experience to be. A lot of the things Nate mentioned are things that we also find important in terms of our programming and components of our program. So, for example, I would say the building blocks, if you will, are to serve and volunteer. So that's where I'm going to coordinate with you as the youth leader. I'm going to say, okay, what kinds of experience do you want to have? Do you want to work with folks who are unhoused? Do you want to have those construction type experiences? Do you want to work at food pantries, gardening opportunities? We have just about every volunteer partner you can imagine in St. Louis who you can work with depending on the kind of experience you want to have. We also try to make sure that if you have folks who have physical needs or special physical needs that would require certain types of activities, that we can accommodate that as well. So a lot of our partners, I can't say enough about them, from women's shelters to, like I said, food pantries, community gardens. It can be a whole host of different places, including the host church at Epiphany UCC. Epiphany is a very small but mighty community, as I like to say, and very progressive. We have folks with a lot of gender expressions in our community. That becomes part of the conversation as well, of course, when folks are here. We really like to open some of those doors that might not have been opened before. The second component of our program is to educate and reflect. We don't jam pack your day in terms of our end of planning things. So what we'll do for you is I will work with you to set up usually 4 to 5 volunteer locations throughout the week. You will spend anywhere from 3 to 5 hours a day at those locations. It might include a tour of that facility. You might talk with one of the leaders at the volunteer location to find out more about what they do, who they serve, why you're there, what you're going to be doing for that day. But then when you come back in the afternoon, there really is the opportunity for the kinds of activities that you want to customize for your group. Some groups that we have that are more familiar with the St. Louis area or who might be in St. Louis themselves choose not to go out and do the fun activities, if you will. They might not go to the aquarium. They might not go see a Cardinals game or, any of these other things that outside groups might do. But we do encourage folks to get out and see the city as well, to kind of get a feel for it. We're very fortunate to have a lot of free things in our city to do, which is amazing. We have a great resource with Forest Park, which has our free art museum, our free zoo, those kinds of things. So there are some downtime activities as well that we encourage our participants to take part in, if for no other reason than to have that sort of processing of what they've just seen in the morning and then coming back in the evening and really encouraging people to reflect on what they did that day, what they experienced that day. We offer some guiding questions for the groups to try to help with that facilitation and reflection component. We open up the sanctuary at Epiphany for prayer, reflection, that type of thing. And usually the meals are a good time to have those conversations as well. And I did touch on this with the rest and play is the third component, but going back to the educate component, one of the things that is unique with our program is we do what's called a Wednesday breakfast in the morning. That's a community breakfast at Epiphany that the folks who come to our program get to take part in, have breakfast with the unhoused folks in our community, some of the folks who maybe are a little bit different than who they have normally met or experienced in their home life. And then on Wednesday evening of that same week, the Epiphany folks, we do not have youth at our church at all. In fact, I am the youngest person, perhaps at close to it, in our congregation. So we don't have a lot of youth available, which is part of why we do this. We love bringing the youth in. So when Wednesday evening comes around, the folks in our community will make a meal for the group, sit down, share, break bread together, get to know one another. And then we follow it up with a class that I call Building Community from Survive to Thrive. And that class is really geared toward a discussion of affordable housing, food security, safety, some major issues that come up in the volunteer programs that they are taking part in while they're here. So we facilitate that discussion. We have a hands-on activity that goes with it. And that's been a really great experience to hear, what folks are getting out of this. And I didn't mention this earlier, but we work with folks anywhere from 6th grade through adult, right? So it's kind of a whole range. We can accommodate about 28, 30 people at max for our facility. But that dinner is a really special component of what we do here. And Elena, I believe one of the things you had asked was, what's the spiritual goal of what we're doing?
Right. Yeah.
And we go back constantly to Micah 6:8, do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly. And that's our program in a nutshell for sure.
Oh, that's beautiful, Amanda. Thank you so much. I'm really touched by the idea that a congregation that's mostly comprised of older adults, they have a ministry to youth. And it's not youth group, and it's not Sunday school, and it's not conventional faith formation, if anything's conventional anymore. But the idea that their ministry to young people is in being a host to service groups, that is very powerful, because I think so often the older adults in our churches throw up their hands and think, oh, there's no way we can be intergenerational because we don't have kids. And in fact, there are so many creative ways to serve the church with an intergenerational perspective. So anyway, that's just a beautiful example. And thank you for sharing. I also was really struck by what you said, that so many of your civic activities, the GEMS in St. Louis, are free. Because what that says to me is, if I'm budgeting a trip, and I'm working with a group of kids who really cannot afford a spring break adventure, that's a destination where I can go with the leanest possible budget, because the city has provided. And that's really important, because, kids from all different backgrounds can benefit from this kind of experience. So I'm going to take it from kids. I'm going to pick back up on intergenerational as a theme. And I'm going to ask James to talk a little bit about that, because like the urban mission experience in St. Louis, Back Bay Mission has a long history of receiving intergenerational groups. James, what are you thinking about that?
Yeah, so I think intergenerational work is some really fascinating, and for me, it's deepening work, right? We have groups that come here that are teens, sometimes younger than teens, through 80, 85, 90 years old, right? And so they come as volunteers to work in either the Micah Day Center, to work at our food pantry, to work with people who are unsheltered, and to go out to work sites to rehab homes. And I think it builds relationships cross-generationally, and actually probably in all of the intersections, right, of life, as they're out on the work sites together, or they're interacting with young and old individuals and middle-aged individuals that are unsheltered. But For us, I think it gives us an opportunity to find to kind of find our connections and our intersections and ways that we can understand generationally each other better, because we're all about being better humans, right, and being better divine individuals. And so for me, we have a lot of long-term volunteers that come in who are, we've had a university student from Heidelberg. We have some young volunteers that stay for a month or longer to kind of assist our groups. And we have volunteers that are, husband and wife team that they're in their 80s. And very honestly, it is that intergenerational work that I think is really key, because I think we are so, we're so divided along party lines and age lines and gender expression. So this is an opportunity to bring folks together in one place. And I think we really do, we really do that well, because we really teach. Like our Chance is 26 years old, and he's the one that goes out with many of our volunteers and teaches them construction skills, right? And he works with the youth, but he works with the folks that are in their 80s on the work site. And so you have these individuals in their 70s and 80s that have some life experience, kind of interacting with this 25-year-old individual who has so much construction experience and grew up doing that, right? So for me, I just love to see those interactions, because we go to annual meetings. I've been to several annual meetings lately, or conferences, and we often see folks kind of in their age groups, right? And here it's like we're all working together for one purpose and one cause. And we also see that out with our Loaves and Fishes feeding program. We see retired folks working with young people in the serving line, setting up tables, taking down tables, cooking the food. And I think that's really a beautiful thing. So one of the things that Elena asked, what's the key to intergenerational work? And I think it's just getting folks out there to do it, right? Giving them opportunities in a place that they can serve together, and that they can share their experiences together, and then come back. I think much like what Amanda said and Nate said, we give folks opportunities to come back in the evening and process, and also process in the morning when they wake up. That's one thing we've been really intentional with is in the morning around 7:30, we have a presentation from some of our staff, our case managers, and our development staff, and our staff that work with Energy Wise, which is a grant that we received to do energy work to help people with their utilities to make their home more affordable, right? Is that we ask questions. So what did you experience? What did you experience generationally, intergenerationally? What was hard? What was difficult? What did you learn? Because many of these folks come down, and of course you do a skill set sheet first, right? These are the skills I have. And many of our folks that have been coming for a while, some of our new folks, they have no clue what it means to run a circular saw, power saw, or even hammer and nail, right? And we find out what they know, what they're able to do before they get down here. And then how can we build their capacity? How can we teach them? And one of my really beautiful moments was we had a first-time congregation from Atlanta that came down. And they were a Black community of faith, a Methodist church. And they came down and they really wanted to kind of discover civil rights along the coast. We did that. We brought a speaker in. But most importantly, many of them had never handled a power tool, right? And so they literally, during the course of the week they were here, by the end of the week, they were just posing for pictures with their favorite power tools. And it was so beautiful and it was uplifting, right? And we continue to hear from them how, hey, we've got some work projects we're doing now back home. But that was an intergenerational group, right? And it was fascinating to see those 25 individuals who have completely different life experiences, different music, right? Different educational experiences, and really different experiences, even as a Black individual in their community, right? Growing up in different generations, to talk about that and to deepen their experiences. And for the first time, really give voice to what it's like to be a 17, 18-year-old young Black man, right? Or what it's like to be an 80-year-old Black woman. And how do we share those experiences together? What does that mean for the here and the now? And how do we apply that to the here and the now? So I think it's the world is our oyster when these groups are down here, because it's transformative. And that's one of the keys to the work we do, is it's all about transformation. It's all about strengthening neighborhoods. It's about transforming the lives of the people we work with and transforming our own lives through the experiences and through the shared experience and shared stories and shared narratives and kind of recreating our own new narrative, right? So we really see people come alive, especially around that intergenerational and around people from different experiences, like you mentioned, Nate, being a very white community, right? We talk a lot about privilege. We talk about white privilege. We talk about what it means to live in poverty, what it means to be unsheltered, and what are the barriers to being sheltered. And then what are the intersections? Gender, race, culture, economics, right? And so we get to learn about that intergenerational setting, which to me is really profound because it brings a sense of unity that we may not have had before. So I could say more, but I'll stop.
No, that's really powerful, James. I appreciate you saying that. I think too, when we talk about mission and mission trips, that for some parts of our country, that is not a good word to use anymore. Nope. It implies the willful ignorance of privilege. It's like, and I think what we do is when we move from models of charity to justice, and from sort of the model of mission, which is like, I'll go do this good thing because I'm so good, right? I haven't heard a single program that isn't actively working to deconstruct those old habits and ideas. And that's why I'm saying volunteer trip. People in California do not want to hear the word mission nowadays. It is a very spicy issue, and we're definitely moving past using that as the default term.
Yeah, and you bring that up, Elena. That's really fascinating. So for the last 2 years, we've had a table at our Equality Fest here, which is a big LGBTQI plus festival. And seriously, we haven't had a presence there before. And we sit there with our table that says Back Bay Mission, and people just, they veer around us, right?
Yeah.
And then we have to call them to the table. No, and share, the deep inclusiveness of the UCC, and as a UCC ministry, fully inclusive, right? So interesting.
And I love that. Takes us right into missiology. Like, what's our theology of mission? What's our theology of impact? And Becca's going to queue up a video from my colleague, Tracy Potter, who is the Children and Youth Ministries professional here in the national setting. And she did a last spring, she did an online conference with adults who work with youth. And one of the key wishes out of that conference was curriculum for young people to do service and mission. And especially with the consciousness that we are not moving backward on our understanding of the way we want to impact the world, very much embracing this idea of creative dislocation, which I hear all of you saying. And Robert McAfee Brown was one of my favorite theologians about that we creatively dislocate ourselves from our privileges and from our places and go out and see what God's going to teach us. So let's take a look at that video. And participants, thank you for hanging in with us. This is almost the last piece, but what I want to invite you to do, Becca, is it better to use the chat or the Q&A box if you're a participant?
Yeah, go ahead and put your questions in the Q&A piece. So on the bottom of your Zoom screen, there's a button that says Q&A. Go ahead and pop your questions in there. We already have one in there, which is great. So go ahead and put them in there, and we'll get to that in a moment.
Becca, can the panelists write in responses to those questions during the video?
They sure can if they'd like to, yeah.
Okay, so panelists, feel free to answer a question if it's directed at you. In the meantime, let's hear about the new free curriculum for your volunteer trip produced by Tracy Potter in her office.
Hello, friends. I am Reverend Tracy Potter, and I serve on the Faith Info team as your Minister for Youth and Young Adult Engagement. In this role, I have the chance to work with local church pastors to provide opportunities for youth to engage in practicing and living out their faith. During the COVID pandemic, all of us were called to make shifts that were unprecedented and challenging, while simultaneously trying to offer meaningful and spirit-filled opportunities for the church. The pandemic offered the chance for us to pause and go back to some of the things we had gotten away from. For me, that meant stopping to hear the concerns of our local churches, and specifically those who work with young people. While there are a lot of challenges I heard, I want to focus on the lack of quality resources. Many of our churches are working with smaller youth groups than they had in the past, and youth ministry staff that is oftentimes made up of either part-time employees or volunteers. As such, there isn't a lot of time to write your own curriculum. While a quick internet search will pull up hundreds of ideas, many of our churches struggle to find something that could be adapted. Many of the existing programs were not progressive enough to fit our collective Christian identity as the United Church of Christ. The 2022 Youth Service Project curriculum, Understanding Our Mission, was Faith Info's response to those challenges. The curriculum is easily adaptable to fit any service project your group already has planned. In its current format, there are 4 days of programming, with 2 days occurring before your mission trip, 1 day for the service project, and then 1 day for post-project reflection and future planning. Each session is about 2 hours long, but I encourage you to modify it to meet the needs of your youth and their abilities. Each of the 4 days has a theme to help center your work and allow you to add as you need to. Day 1 is, why do we do it? In it, you will explore the reasons the church engages in service learning opportunities and how that brings about a more just world. Day 2 is entitled, It's Just Not Fair. In it, you will explore how privilege is at work at all times, whether we are aware of it or not. We can use our privileges to bring about meaningful change by working towards justice. Day 3, which is your service project day, explores the concept of Together We're Strong. In it, you will explore the theme of teamwork and how we can accomplish so much more when we work together. And the final day is Now What? This day, you will explore next steps for your youth group to continue learning about ways to engage in service learning work and opportunities that are important to your particular youth. Each of the 4 sessions offers a scripture reference that is tied in with the daily devotional, helps structures conversation, educates about justice work, includes fun and learning activities, and closes with a devotional. You'll also have the option to do homework for group bonding. This curriculum is free and is available for a download by visiting uccresources.org. Once there, you can type the name Understanding Our Mission or Service Project Curriculum in the search bar, and you will be taken to the resource. You will have to check out as if it were a traditional purchase, but then you'll be able to download it or print it for your use. It is my hope that you find this tool helpful as you continue your service to the church. Youth ministry can be exhausting and tough, but it is also one of the most rewarding opportunities to watch young people grow into their commitment to God and God's creation. My prayer is that you have all you need to sustain you and your ministry on this journey of faith formation.
Excellent. And Becca dropped that link right into the chat, so you can grab it right away. One of the participants asked if they could receive contact information from the panelists. Panelists, I will invite you to post that. I see Nate posted his in the, well, how would you like us to do that? Would you like, I don't know if you really want to post your contact info out on the whole big internet, but if you do, throw it in the chat. If not, I respect that choice, but you can certainly look people up. You can look up their congregations and their ministries on the internet or in the UCC Data Hub annual yearbook. Well, thanks, James and Nate. Appreciate that. I know people are probably going to want to reach out to you. We're kind of getting to the home stretch. There's been a lot of great information. There's been a great perspective shared, different perspectives. I want to give each of our panelists a chance for a final thought, an invitation to those watching. I want to invite all of you who are out there, check out our Global Hope e-news and check out the ministry opportunities page under volunteer ministries. That's where we post volunteer opportunities, including mission trip sites. And I will tell you, you may have noticed that with the terrible uptick in disasters related to climate change, we are seeing a need for more volunteer service trips to disaster sites. They are complicated trips. My colleague, Leslie Remaley, Minister for Disaster Recovery, and I are planning to offer a second follow-up webinar about disaster recovery volunteer service. So if that's kind of what you're thinking, please know that that'll be out there. We'll put it in the Global Hope e-news. So make sure you subscribe to that to get all the current info. But let me pass the microphone around. We'll go Nate, Amanda, James. Please share final thought, comment, question, a word of hope.
Okay. I just want to say thank you again for everybody that could be here today. I'll just say this. I don't think there's a more valuable experience than investing in our young people and taking them out and letting them be the hands and feet of Jesus and serving people in our communities for so many reasons, all the reasons that the other panelists mentioned today. But I have seen so much growth and transformation in the young people that I've had the privilege of serving. You know, being 15 years in, I know these young adults now, they're in their 20s and their 30s, some of them, and they've gone on to do more work like this in college. And now they're coming back and wanting to serve with us as they're starting their own families. And there's something that happens to a young person, I think, when we take them on these trips. This light bulb goes off, and it hopefully sets them on a course for understanding that they have a responsibility to do what they can with the talents that they have and the time that they have to make this world a better place every day, and what that looks like for them and their own setting and their own talents. But I think we have such a privilege and an opportunity to introduce them to that. And for me, that is just so life-giving in ministry, but also just absolutely incredible. And I just want to add one last piece, Elena. We travel on these trips a lot, and we're always looking for churches that would be willing to host us for a night, either on our way to a site or on the way back. And I want to offer that in Avon Lake. We are always willing. We have the space. We're fortunate to host groups. And if you're ever traveling through Cleveland or through Avon Lake to or from a trip and you need a place to stay, we are more than happy to host you and your group, because a lot of churches in a lot of parts of the country have offered us the same hospitality, and it's the least we can do. So thank you for your time. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to speak offline as well.
Thank you, Nate. That's a great invitation, because they have the one thing you cannot do a volunteer trip without. After faith, they have showers. And I know everybody out there who's ever planned a volunteer trip knows that that's the problem. You got to find a shower. So Amanda, do you have a final thought for us?
Yes, thanks again. I'll echo that for having us today. We sure appreciate it. I would say that, we've talked a lot about differences here today, and how important it is to get out of your bubble, your comfort zone, whatever it is you call it. What I find with the groups that we have and with the program that we've put together here in St. Louis is that folks leave understanding that it's actually that we have more in common than we realize. So that's the thing that gives me hope, is that when people leave here, when they finish their volunteer experience, you've bridged those gaps, right? You've had the opportunity to see what we have in common rather than what we have in terms of our differences. So that's what I would like to focus on. And that's kind of why we do what we do, I would say, is to make folks, to give them the opportunity to see for themselves that the world's as big as it is. We all kind of have the same wants, needs, and desires.
That's right. And we clear our eyes so God can give us a new vision. James, a final thought from you.
Yeah, final thought, I think, piggybacking on Nate and Amanda. I think one of the things that's very interesting when people come down here to kind of be mission campers here is sometimes in the first discussion on Sunday or Monday morning is they don't really see homeless in their own community. They don't see people who are unsheltered or unhoused, or they don't interact. And at the end of the week here, they're like, okay, we're going to go back to our own community. And then we get a call or an email a few days later, and they're like, yeah, we have people who are unsheltered here. We see them, we recognize them, right? And we recognize poverty, and we're seeing the poverty in our own community. And so I think part of what we have an opportunity to do here is open people's eyes, as Nate said, to be the hands and feet of Jesus, but really to be the eyes of Jesus, to be able to look people in the eye that are homeless or unsheltered on the street corners or wherever they're at, right? Or people that are in poverty, and smile, give them a nod. And if you can, give them a bottle of water and an energy bar, but just acknowledge our humanity. our oneness, right? That we're all in this together and we're all one. And what you said, Amanda, I think is really profound, right? It's know what we have in common, and what we have in common is our humanity and our divinity. So I think that's really one important aspect of this kind of work that we all do together.
Thank you, James. Thank you. Thank you, Nate and Amanda and James, for being here today. Thank you, Becca and Brandy, for all of your program and tech support. I have 2 invitations, and then I'm going to give a closing prayer. Well, first is 1300 East 9th Street in Cleveland is open. It's this cool, like hybrid, high-tech workspace, and it is your UCC home. So if you are in Cleveland, anytime, please come by, schedule a visit. The doors are open for members of the United Church of Christ to be here in this space. And also coming up end of June, early July of 2023 is General Synod is coming up in Indianapolis, Indiana. And, you know, you might be a delegate, but you can always be a visitor and come and partake of that experience. It's the church beyond the walls of your local congregation. And I think that's one of the themes in our discussion today, is that the church exists far beyond the address where you spend every Sunday. And you go there, you're going to meet God, and it's going to change your life. So let's have a closing moment of prayer. Holy Spirit, you move through the United Church of Christ in so many different settings. And today we give you thanks for the times when our members step out to serve. They meet themselves, they meet the world, and they meet your Son, Jesus. For this, we are eternally grateful. And so in your many names, we pray with gratitude and appreciation for all that has come before and all that lies ahead. Amen.
Amen. And thank you. Thank you all panelists. Thank you, Elena, for putting this together. And I want to thank you all for attending. And just a quick note, we talked today about US volunteer service trips, but we also have global trips available through Global Ministries. Those we call those our people-to-people pilgrimage programs. So we're framing it as a pilgrimage rather than necessarily a service trip, but those have been on pause throughout the pandemic, and we're hoping to restart them in 2023. So check out globalministries.org for our people-to-people pilgrimage options. And then I will say, if you're watching this live on YouTube afterwards, all of the resources that we mentioned will be in the description below the video. And for those of you who registered to attend, we'll be sending out a follow-up email with all those resources as well. So thank you for joining us today, and keep an eye out for future Wednesdays with the World webinars. We'll have a bunch towards the end of the year, particularly one related to a Blue Christmas service, as well as some other learning opportunities with global partners and with national partners.
Thank you, everyone. See you next time.
Siblings in Christ, if this conversation has moved you, if what's been offered here has helped enhance your ministry or your soul, please consider donating towards the annual fund of the United Church of Christ by texting UCC to 41444. Your support will help programs like this in the essential work of the United Church of Christ. Thank you for your support. Be blessed as you continue your day. Know that you are not alone, and we are holding you in prayer. Amen.